Chairman, Vice Chairman, members of the Commission. I'd like to focus on a question that actually Commissioner Benveniste asked or observed, that we actually had pretty good intelligence about the terrorists in the lead up to September 11, and I think that's right. And what I'd like to focus on is not September, but August. Because in August, the FBI learned that there were two terrorists whose names we had, who were in the country, who were clearly here to kill Americans. We had 2.5 weeks to find them. They were living openly in San Diego. They were getting California IDs. They were buying stuff, engaging in financial transactions, signing rental agreements all in their own name, making reservations on the plane that they would ultimately fly into the Pentagon. We couldn't find them. That's a terrible failure. And I'd like to explore a little from what I can gather. I'm not cleared to review any of this material anymore, but I have reviewed pretty carefully the public discussions of what happened to try to explore what went wrong there. And I think when you look at it closely, it's really a failure of tools and a failure of rules. The tools problem is the problem we're here to talk about today. The FBI agent who discovered this and made it his mission to try to find these guys had some electronic tools. He was able to look in some databases for arrests, for certain automobile registrations. They hadn't been arrested and they hadn't registered any vehicles. He did not have access to a lot of government information, so that it took him about 1.5 weeks to figure out what address one of the terrorists had put on his visa as he entered, and then to check with the hotel that he put down to see if the guy ever stayed there. He didn't have computerized access once he got legal authority to go into either of those databases. So we lost weeks there. What's more, he didn't have computerized access to any of the records that these guys were generating, not the financial records, not the travel reservation, or even some of the California records. So there's clearly a failure of tools. If he could have been able to find those two guys and then check the links that they had to many of the other terrorists, there were direct shared addresses, as I remember, links to the people who flew into the South Tower and the North Tower. We had a chance to stop this. It's the one chance that I can see in all of the errors that were made where we really could have prevented this if we'd had the tools to find these guys. And it is a scandal that we don't have them. So we need that. We need, at a minimum, an ability to do those searches quickly and efficiently, not just by shoe leather and by calling people, which is the method that the FBI has used for a generation. That's just to fight the last war. Obviously, the next set of terrorists is not going to be so accommodating as to use their real names. We're going to need other mechanisms, and I've listed in my testimony, which I've provided, about a dozen IT capabilities that our investigators need in order to find these folks and to respond appropriately to crises. So clearly, we need more tools. But I think when you read the story of what went wrong in those 2 weeks with an eye that is informed by bureaucratic realities and political realities, you'll see that there's a problem with the rules as well. It's heartbreaking to read what this agent said when he asked for the authority to get the assistance of law enforcement. There's 1 million law enforcement agents in the country. There were 3 times as many FBI law enforcement agents as intelligence agents. He wanted to get help on that side of the FBI, and he was told by FBI headquarters, not on your life. You cannot, capitalized, cannot do that, because there's a wall between law enforcement and intelligence. And his response was to say, the American people will not understand this. Someone is going to die because of this. Osama bin Laden is the principal beneficiary of the wall that we have built. How can we possibly maintain this? The answer was, we don't like it either, but that's the rule. Now, I feel strongly about this, obviously, because I was part of building the wall. I was at NSA. I thought the wall responded to an appropriate, reasonable worry, theoretical but real, about civil liberties and privacy, and that we could have a wall and still have an effective response to the national security problems that we have. We wrote rules, and we thought we had done a fine job of carefully balancing all of those equities. We obviously failed. We failed terribly. And that failure, I think, reflects both a desire to constantly add to the protections, even against theoretical risks to privacy, that we have built into our system, and at the same time not to spend as much time worrying about whether people will actually be able to do their jobs to protect Americans. Because what finally happened in this case was the rules might just barely have been workable if it were not for the fact that there was a privacy scandal in the FISA court in 2000 and 2001, in which the court believed that it had not been properly informed about contacts across the wall when it was given FISA orders to sign. It ordered a massive review. It threw out one of the principal FBI investigators who appeared before it, and I'm guessing, though I don't know, that disciplinary action and maybe even a perjury indictment was considered for that fellow. This was so bad that we dropped coverage on terrorism suspects in the United States in early 2001. So Al-Qaeda is preparing to kill thousands of Americans. We can't even keep up the wiretaps that we have authorized in the past. It's a disaster. And it's a disaster because there was such an intent focus on preventing even the most theoretical privacy abuse. That's the lesson that I would draw from September 11. I just would say one more thing. I'm very worried that we're going back there. That what we have seen, I gave a speech once, I said, you know, we had 2.5 years of serious failures. We had a major failure on September 11. We've had 2.5 years to figure out what went wrong, who should be disciplined, and one person has been forced out of government, Admiral Poindexter. And the lesson that you can draw from that is, well, you can screw up pretty badly in protecting the American people, but if you get crosswise with the privacy lobby, you're gone. That is exactly the wrong message to be sending to our FBI and CIA agents. And finally, I'd say, if you look at what's happening in the administration today, efforts to develop new and innovative tools are stalling. And even the wall is coming back. My understanding is that within TTIC, there are actually limits on what intelligence agents can look at by way of law enforcement information, despite our major effort to get rid of that wall and the terrible consequences that we saw from having it. So my fear is that we are reestablishing August of 2001, and that the real risk here is that, just like last time, that August will lead us to September.